personal interview and a review. Pricing structure was negotiated, and following additional reference checks, the group determined to move forward with Catalyst Commercial. The track record of this company is very strong, and they expect tremendous success in this area. Please understand, this is primarily a relationship with Catalyst to recruit retail to this area. As part of the preparation to do so, a comprehensive market study and analysis was completed. So some quick talking points. It's important to understand Catalyst Commercial will be working closely with Magnet and Cape and Jackson officials throughout this process. In addition, it's critical to understand that they will be working with local landowners and developers. Catalyst understands the importance of having these folks on this team and knows that deals cannot and will not get done without their participation. Also, existing retail establishments may be concerned about increased competition. The market study includes a gap analysis, which is a categorical determination of retail spending capacity. We are a regional hub, and the addition of appropriate retail to the area will increase the pie and provide more opportunities to our existing base. This has been proven in many economic models. So I'm going to let you hear from the expert now without further. So I would, my pleasure to introduce the president of Catalyst Commercial, Mr. Jason Claunch. Jason.
Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, it's an honor and pleasure to be in your community. And this has been a process in the making, but we've certainly enjoyed working with your staff and Magnet and Jackson. Everyone's been very cooperative. We've had a number of engaging discussions with the property owners, and it's encouraging to see the amount of economic growth that you already have. And so essentially our role is to help sort of guide that process and look for opportunity and add value where we can. Just to give you a little bit of background, I think John gave you a quick summary. Essentially, you know, our role will be looking at opportunities to capture sustainable infill development. We are certainly context sensitive. We want to make sure that this merchandising is aligned with your current base. We also know that you're an emerging market. You've got the new sports complex and other large facilities and some greenfield sites. And so part of our role will be looking at the appropriate mix and potential users to catalyze those locations and identify markets where, you know, new anchors could exist. And that could be through redevelopment or revitalization. And then as John had mentioned, we certainly will be involved and make ourselves available, but we also will be involved through just the underwriting of key prospects, not only as we source and conduct outreach, but we also will make ourselves available to help other developers and property owners secure these tenants. On a number of areas, so this is a comprehensive analysis, which includes both the Cape market and Jackson market locally. We certainly recognize that downtown is special. We're excited about the projects, and so part of our role will be looking at nuance, probably local or niche operators for the downtown market. The Center Junction complex, we recognize there's an opportunity for other sports related activities or other big box that could take advantage of the throughput that facility will create. We want to make sure that we maximize your return on that investment. We also recognize that the type of people there will locally be non-local, and that will foster other hospitality. And I know there's already been some works in that. We've had conversations and visit with CBL in St. Louis regarding the mall. We know that's very important, certainly a huge gravity an economic center for the city. And so we want to make sure that we make ourselves available ideas as it relates to activating that. And we'll certainly make sure that we're partnering in conjunction with the mall and the existing owners and its structure. It's a very complicated process when you have malls, and we're working on several, but we hope to be able to add value. And then obviously just emerging centers, North Park Center, and then the Drury portfolio. These are just a few. We're constantly interviewing and aggregating additional properties, and we'll make ourselves available. So this is certainly a living and growing document as we begin the recruitment process. Just to give you a little bit of background on just the process in general, The first step was to conduct a market assessment, establish the trade area, understand how far your customers are willing to travel. John mentioned that this obviously is a retail hub for a regional retail area, and so we wanted to understand the magnitude of that base. With that geography established, we were able to conduct a market analysis, and we really spent some time looking at, I would say, some of the competitive nodes, but we know that the majority of those nodes probably shop Cape as its core market. And then as we talked about it, we spent a lot of time looking at individual properties, spending time with the property owners, understanding their nuances, their internal business plan, how they define success, because we recognize this process is finding the intersect between your vision and really the ownership constraints and goals and visions, and also the market opportunities. And so this process is sometimes like threading the needle, but we understand it's an important one. All this data to essentially identify potential tenants. John had mentioned that we're going to be sensitive to approach a merchandising strategy that's sensitive to tenants and uses that are already here, and look for those opportunities that have additional capacity. But there's also a statistical method as you approach tenants and how they underwrite markets. And so we're very familiar with that process in order to identify tenants. And ultimately, we accumulate all this into what we call a merchandising plan. And so I think that's the document that we prepared. If you don't have a copy, we want to make sure that you have one for your review. So just some quick highlights on the market assessment. We compiled essentially all this information on some creative deliverables. The market assessment is something that could be used. It's got a lot of demographic data, and we'll give you some highlights. The value proposition of why Cape Girardeau and how that fits into the regional market. And then as part of the collateral for retail recruitment, we put together an aerial map that essentially has the major traffic counts, all the major retailers, and a lot of the major facilities just for recruitment purposes. Through this process, we prepared a number of methods to identify your primary trade area. We recognize that certainly your core market area is much larger than this, but we want to understand where your core market customers coming from. So we used a number of gravity models and TripGen, and we believe statistically that the majority of your customers are coming from around a 31-minute drive time, but that covers Jackson and Sykeston and essentially the greater Cape Girardeau market. Through that, we were able to essentially establish a trade area population of over 100,000 people. That's an important sort of milestone. Above 100,000 people generally gives you another threshold of tenants and major anchors that you may not be able to get essentially marketing and selling a smaller geography or your local community. We also spent a ton of time looking at data, just factors that were important, income and growth rates, and essentially the primary trade area growth rate for Cape is essentially the highest within the state and also within the local region. So I know these are important factors as it relates to disposable income and those tenants that you're interested in pursuing. And then we noticed certainly different anomalies, or maybe an imbalance in a good way, of just a larger population of millennials. And that's obviously due to the student population, but there's a nuanced merchandising strategy to tailor towards students, and also that would be an attribute targeting major employers for those knowledge workers. So this will help us sort of situate some of the new evolving tenants that in types of uses that prefer active engagement and active living, and some of those things that may be more attractive to student populations, to help sort of evolve your retail base and keep it current and relevant. We also spent a lot of times looking at demographic factors and home values. Essentially, between Cape and Jackson, you have some of the largest home values in the region. Again, just another sign of additional discretionary income and growing base. And then John mentioned we did spend a lot of time looking at the population base for the students and some of the propensity of categories that they would have normal spending patterns. We looked at some of the major employers and maybe the workforce demand that would spin off, the different wallet shares. We also looked at some of the road patterns and the networks, and look at commuter pattern. And essentially, we know that this market could conservatively support over another 200,000 square feet of additional retail. From a fiscal impact, that essentially could be at your 1% mark, assuming $300 a foot in sales, over $600,000 of annual benefit to the city, assuming your 1% capture, not even the whole 2.75. And so For us, this is the pursuit. This is the opportunity from a fiscal standpoint to pursue. Some of the feedback that we got as we engage with some of the major property owners is that they've got interest from some of the national anchors. They're just not able to get them over the hump. And so hopefully this process and the data will help encourage some of those conversations. Obviously, the mall structure, it's very complicated. We think that, in the next 20 to 30 years, there'll probably be only 200 or 300 malls left in the nation. So we want to make sure that this mall is sustainable in the tenant base, and we're working on a number of those things. We're excited about downtowns. Downtowns are very special, and you have an amazing downtown. And so, how can we encourage with retail the appropriate gateways and activation along the streets and frontage, and continue to help advance that conversation. And I think for us, one of we heard feedback and the observation is just the limited remaining frontage on I-55. And I know that that's sort of the critical frontage. And so, we want to make sure that we help you guys get that right and look for those tenants that are catalytic and are accretive to this overall process. We did spend some time driving and looking at some of the cities in the region, Carbondale, Sykeston, just looking at the retail base, Perryville, some of the downtown niche operators, because we really wanted to understand essentially your role in the greater region. We recognize that this is a nuanced process, and we really want to understand the fabric of those markets and be able to position this market in context with some of those other markets. And as we mentioned, we spent a lot of time looking at really the individual attributes of some of the Drury assets, so that when we're going to market, that we really align the types of tenants that are fit for each one of these individual properties. And as you know, where they're located, if they have interstate frontage, the physical constraints, the attributes around each one of these properties will have a substantial impact on the types of tenants and the conversations and the value proposition for each one of these tenants. And so, again, looking at some of the opportunities around the mall and in around the mall, the Town Plaza Shopping Center, which I know there's been some investments made and some revitalization efforts there along the Kings Highway. Some new centers, I think, that are changing hands and looking at establishing a base along that northern gateway. So, what are the opportunities to help aggregate the Northport Center is sort of your northern apex. And then Center Junction, this is obviously an older map. It's exciting to see the progress, but we really do think that this has a substantial potential. I know you do as well. But how can we help sort of coalesce the opportunities there as you reach out and start to anchor the properties around that investment? So where do we go from here? We prepared through our analytics a very robust data set. We've got over 100 operators that we identify that operate within Missouri that aren't in your market. We refined that list to 20 targets. And so right now we're going through a process of outreach where we're developing a customized package and sharing this information with those prospects in preparation for a national retail show at ICSC coming up in May in Vegas. Where a lot of the anchors will be there. And so as we stimulate conversations and generate warm leads, we're hoping that we can solidify deals either before that event or at that event. And then the next step is we're going to align essentially our merchandising strategy to these key prospects, develop that custom marketing material. So every individual operator will get custom material. This is an ongoing process with continuous recruitment. So as we stimulate leads and develop the lead cycle, we're going to continue to work these tenants through the sales cycle. And then we're going to be reporting in essentially back to John and his group on where we are, the conversations, any objections that we hear, and look for opportunities to manage those objections as we go forward, and certainly go through the conversion process. And then for those that we can't get approved, that we feel like statistically made sense and there are gaps, then we're going to continue to do a postmortem review so we can help sort of manage future opportunities in advance. And then next steps would be just developing a specific merchandising strategy for Center Junction. We think that where it is in its moment in time and the critical location that makes sense. We're going to continue to look for ways to partner with your investment already in the infrastructure in downtown. We're going to look for opportunities to catalyze new emerging projects and work with John on where those are and where that makes sense. We see probably a long-term strategy. This is outside of the scope of this project and probably outside of even our full expertise, but would be maybe reinventing the corridor in Kings Highway and looking at opportunities to reestablish that as a stronger network, and then look at just general comprehensive plan of additional holes for additional value over time. So with that, I'll be more than happy to open any questions, but hopefully this gives you a perspective of at least a partial effort that we've gone through with John and the mayor so far. So.
Our budget is so sensitive to sales tax that this is really, really important to us, and the growth, sustaining and then growing our retail base now and into the future, really, really important for us. And of course, one of the challenges is the mall.
Yes, sir.
And you addressed the mall some, but with CBL, any other comments about the future there, or future possibilities, or what CBL is thinking that and I know you any particulars, but really interested in exploiting that. It's a challenge. I don't want it to become a real threat as we move ahead.
Well, I'll say, Mayor, I appreciate the question. We had some very good and engaging conversations with CBL. Obviously, they're just the leasing agent for the mall,
Sure.
And so there's other decisions that are made, way above their level.
Yeah.
We're working on a number of malls in a number of markets. I will say this is probably the best positioned mall. And certainly the fact that you are a regional hub, you don't need our data to prove that. I think it reinforces that, gives me confidence that your mall has really significant potential. But we're seeing sort of a transformation across the United States and all levels of mall. I think your mall is still relevant. I think the location is very relevant. I think the strategy will be is defining the use that aligns with the current ownership's goals and really structured in something that makes sense. And that's going to be a challenge. And it's probably not one solution. It's probably two or three solutions aggregated that make sense. And I'm happy to talk about that more in detail, but we have a lot of confidence in the mall, and we know that CBL is a good partner to have as it relates to helping us source that solution with them.
Okay, great. Very good.
I have a question to ask.
Yes,
First,
sir.
let me thank Mayor Rediger. 4 years ago, when I started thinking about running for city council, he said, "Now remember, we're a regional hub, so you have to have this under consideration in whatever decisions you make." So appreciate you're here to continue that discussion. I did want to ask about something you mentioned, that you had looked at retailers currently active in Missouri, then narrowed it down from there. To what extent are you looking beyond Missouri to retailers who aren't in the state but should be, or in neighboring states but would be a fit for our market?
No, that's a great question. So I won't give away all of our trade secrets, but our analytical model essentially factors in retailers across the United States and essentially compares the operating attributes to their existing locations with your market with a fair amount of high level of accuracy. We know that the probability of conversion goes up when they already have operations here and distribution channels and structures. And it makes it a little bit more challenging when they don't have those networks set up. But for those national retailers that can warehouse and distribute, we didn't eliminate any options that were outside of Missouri. But we know that those that operate within the state or within the region, it's probably a better way to that we're going to have a higher success rate on the conversion. Our goal, I think you'll appreciate this. Our goal is to pay for ourselves as quick as we can and add value to this process as quick as we can. Doesn't mean we're not willing to work on the harder stuff and stretch. But in my mind, going after operators that have a higher concentration in Missouri that aren't on this region makes sense. But we're not. It's not an exclusive list, and certainly our eyes are not myopic in that sense. So
Good. Thanks, Wayne. Any others? John, any other comments from you?
Would just simply say that now that the presentation's been given, I think Alex has a final version. If not, we'll make sure we have the final version, so we'll deliver it to you
Okay.
folks. And Mark will make available what we can as well, okay? But obviously, the proprietary stuff about the specific list is not going to be made available. I'm more than happy to visit with any council person that wants to have a discussion about that. We'd be more than happy to do that. But other than that, any additional input you have, please direct Alex or me, and we can go from there.
Obviously, a lot of studies been done through Magnet, and Dwayne Jackson's been very involved. We've been very involved with Alex and so forth, and then now we're kind of at the beginning to start to reap some dividends from our investment. So, Jason, we thank you for being here.
Honor and pleasure. And I just want to say, this is not a unique process for us. We work in a lot of regions and where there's partnerships, but and it's not abstract and unusual. But I really want to say it's an honor and pleasure to work with Mayor and John, and we think of it as sort of cooperation. We've used that word before, but that's how you're going to win. And I think your market is not as strong without Jackson, and they're certainly not as strong without you. And so we're excited about this partnership. We've been very careful and sensitive, just as we are from a retail standpoint, of how we pursue things. But we know at the end of the day, our fiduciary is to find the retailers that produce the highest sales per square foot, and help guide them to the location where they think they're going to be optimal. And so for us, this is exciting. It just gives us a bigger sandbox to play in, but really appreciate the opportunity and the trust. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Got several in the audience this evening that are concerned about this subject. So now we'll hear from anybody in the audience that wants to speak to the council on any item that is not on the agenda. Anyone?
Can we speak to that?
You absolutely can.
Hi, my name's Dan Drury, president of Mid-America Hotels. In all due respect, Center Junction is all four corners. That includes Jackson as well. And it didn't show that on the drawing. It just showed the northwest corner. It also includes, the northeast corner includes the southeast corner, the northwest corner, and the southwest corner as well. I spoke before the Paducah Hospitality Association the other night. And years ago, some of you might know that I suggested Cape go over and look at some of the things where Paducah was doing. In return, I suggested to the mayor of Paducah that they come over to Cape and look what we're doing over here in this area. But I am going to, and I also suggest to everybody to go down and see what Jonesboro, Arkansas is doing. Go back over to Paducah, see what they're doing. Come visit back and forth. My dad taught me something a long time ago. There's only a couple real geniuses in the world. The rest of us have got a copy off of them. They're all doing great things that we can benefit by their knowledge. And Jonesboro is going crazy. We now have right to work. May have something down the road where we don't have the prevailing wage thing, which has been very costly to a lot of the projects that we do. So let's take advantage of this and let's see this thing go. So I applaud you for putting this together, but I just wanted to point out a couple of those little issues.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for being here. Anyone else? Thank you all for being here. Scott, the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have no presentations, communications and reports. Council, I know a few of you had some things you wanted to point out.
I've got a few. I toured the wastewater treatment plant with Steve and Molly last week. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Daddy-daughter dance that Parks and Rec put on. Talk about that.
Okay.
Others?
Unless someone mentioned it at the last meeting, I want to mention the article in the Missouri Municipal League magazine about the Marquette district downtown.
Okay, very good. I want to reinforce, we still have 3 strategic planning meetings, ward meetings ahead of us. The next one tomorrow evening at Ward 4, Councilman Guard at Elks. And then on the 7th at Osage for Ward 5, and on the 9th for Ward 6, that'll be at the Lutheran home. We've had input. We've had not great attendance there, but input, and I think we've benefited from going to the citizens in the wards and listening and having interaction. I appreciate all the many staff that have been a part of that. I think that has benefited the meetings also. So Scott and all the staff, I appreciate being there.
Absolutely. I think it's been good for staff too to hear, and I think the people that have come out have gotten really good service and have had opportunities to talk to someone that could really hear and couldn't always address their problem immediately, but could hear their problem and sometimes give them suggestions. Sometimes say, well, we're going to work on that, and so I think it has been positive.
And then also toured with Julia and some staff and council. Some council have done this too. The indoor sports complex and how that is coming along. What a fantastic asset that is going to be for our community. First week in May. The open house will be May 6th on a Saturday. I understand that finalizing an event there for Sunday the 7th. It'll crank right away, and there's interest in over 30 events already there at the sports complex, and that sports complex is going to do exactly what it was intended to do, and that's bring visitors to our city that will shop in our city and eat in our city and stay in our hotels and let it give us more exposure to Cape Girardeau.
And
That'd be a
Jackson
great
too.
asset.
And Jackson too.
Well, our region, it's our whole region that I wouldn't want to let Dwayne out, even though we still are. What was that word, Jason? Cooperation. Yeah, cooperation. I got to remember that one. But yeah, we are a region. None of us, without our region, I'm an old retailer, and we couldn't survive just Cape Girardeau. We got to have our whole region in our trade area. So that is going to be a great asset. And the Drury Plaza and the Convention Center is coming along and opening on schedule, probably July. So a lot of things going on this first half. Those are will be my comments.
Very good. We have a public hearing tonight. We have the public hearing for the 2017-2022 capital improvements program. We spent this study session, I think, for 3 or 4 meetings, and have been bringing it into line with comments that we've heard. And we'll hear from the public tonight in this public hearing, and any additional comments that any council member has as well. So we'll have that public hearing.
Before you go on from there, Scott, my comment would be I thank you to staff for how this has been put together, and the drafts that have, and all of the interaction personally with all the council and so forth. I think this is probably the most massaged CIP program that we've had in my 7 years as mayor. So thank you for your dedication to really putting that together. I think we've got a final draft here, right?
Well, we'll find out. Maybe citizens have some more to say, and that's what the public hearing is for, and we remain open to that.
Sure.
We feel very good about it, and we have spent a lot of time being very open and transparent about it. And so I think I don't know, Alex, do you know how many drafts this is?
This would be the 5th draft.
The fifth draft. So it's that shows our ability to adjust and change, and so we are excited about that tonight.
Thank you.
Our consent agenda tonight, of course, we'll have appearances, but the consent agenda tonight contains the second and third reading of the Town Plaza subdivision. If you recall, this divides the subdivision into two different lots. Basically, the old NARS facility and the new restaurant on one side, and then the rest of the Town Plaza subdivision on the other. Item number 4 is the approval of the Independence Sidewalks projects for a program agreement with Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission. That's the sidewalks that would go up Independence from Kings Highway to the new roundabout. I'm excited about that. And number 5 is the second, third reading of special use permit for the Community Caring Council. This is for the old Life Care Center on Independence. Reuse of that, and that's a great reuse of that facility that will be serve our community very well. The number 6 is the First Amendment to the escrow agreement with Brandon Williams Development. This is for Williamsburg Phase 1, and then we also have approval of the preliminary plat for Collins Mill subdivision that Ryan talked about earlier. They're off of Old Hopper. 8 and 9 are acceptance of the sidewalk improvements and approval of the partial release of the escrow agreement for Williamsburg Phase 1. Are there any items you would like to have removed from the consent agenda, or items that you need to abstain from?
Scott, I need to abstain from 6, 7, 9. Yeah.
All right.
Could have thrown 8 in, but it's just sidewalks.
Yeah. Okay.
6, 7, and 9.
6, 7, 9. All right. Get that, Bruce? All right. Any others? If not, we have 4 new ordinances tonight. The first one is a quitclaim deed of some property that we have on Rockwood Drive. This is some property that was deeded to the city. It's a wooded area, and it's necessary for the Blantner property. They're wanting to do some improvement there, and it's this, by deeding that property to them, allows them to put in, I believe, a wheelchair ramp, if I remember. Is that right, Ryan?
House addition.
Oh.
But I don't know if she's moving forward with it.
Okay. But it allows them to move forward with
Yeah, it provides space through the house. And
okay.
so you give them setback and make it less.
So there's that. That's number 10. Number 11 is the record plat for the Capital Real Estate subdivision. This is at the corner of Middle and Washington. It's currently an L-shaped property. Going to subdivide it into 2, and therefore allow for put another house on that corner lot there. That's by Mr. Strong, Quinn Strong. Number 12 is a record plat for American RV Storage subdivision. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we abandoned the right-of-way for Sunset Boulevard off of William Street, and this now subdivides that property. It's off of that roofing building off of Sheraton. And then the last one is the amendment to the city court ordinances regarding fences that Ryan talked about earlier. Any questions regarding those new ordinances? Lastly, we have an appointment to the University of Missouri Extension Council.
That would be Russell Humphrey. That's a mayor appointment as the only eligible for appointment. Russell's a resident of the city. So we'll be recommending for your approval, Russell Humphrey.
And this is by ordinance is a mayor appointment
Right.
through the university extension. So, but it does will need to be confirmed. But we will need a motion to confirm that at the regular meeting. I have in front of you several memos regarding summary of TTF, the Public Safety Trust Funds, our December review of the revenue and expenses, the sales tax revenue ending September 30th, and the appointment and your memo for the appointment next time to the Board of Adjustments. Also have advisory board minutes for your review as well. So I believe that's all, Mayor.
I'd like to encourage council to study and review, if you haven't already, the semi-annual summaries of both TTF, public safety, and our revenue and expense, the 6-month revenue and expense balancing. Okay, council, any other subjects for study session? If not, we do need to have a closed session tonight for legal action, litigation, confidential communication with our legal counsel pursuant to revised statute 610-021, number 1. If I could have a motion.
So moved.
All right, Gunn,
Second.
and seconded by, who was in it? Bowen?
Robbie was first.
Rocky was first. Guard? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we'll stand adjourned, reconvene at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
It's good to see you anyway. I know.